there has been some appalling behaviour by social workers, police officers, including senior police chiefs and others who chose not to rock the boat. Let's look the other way because of racial sensitivities. Mm-hmm. People are not courageous to stand up and call facts. Facts. Were there to be, shall we rather clumsily say, an uprising or huge civil unrest, I think the police know but won't say that they don't have the numbers to be able to put that down and keep the streets safe.
Why is this not like a national agenda where everyone's being told you're not protected? There's not enough cops on the streets to protect everyone now.
Policing now on the front line is more dangerous. They face violence at far greater levels than we did. And I'm a cop who got stabbed in the neck, stared down the barrel of a gun on more than one occasion, and had to live in witness protection. Not only do they face a far greater danger, and not only are they assaulted in far, far greater numbers than we ever were, but the trauma they have to deal with.
When you see politicians like Robert Jenrick, how does it make you feel as a copper?
I'm fair play to Robert Jenrick, although I did really annoy him.
How?
Can I just tell you what happened?
Welcome to the Daily Expresso, a perfect blend of news and views. Today, I'm joined by a man who's been on the front line of Britain's fight against organised crime. He has stared down some of the most dangerous people in the country, and today he's here to tell us why policing is in crisis, how gang culture has evolved, and why public trust in law enforcement is circling the drain. Former undercover cop, star of Channel 4's Hunted, and author of several explosive books, and soon to be a one-man show, Peter Bleksley. Welcome to the Daily Expresso.
Thank you very much for having me.
Peter, let's start with this. You worked undercover for years. How bad is the real criminal underbelly of this country compared to what we see on the news and how we perceive crime to be in this country? What's it actually really like face to face?
Well, I left policing a long time ago, and the face of serious and organised crime has changed dramatically since then. If we rewind, if we may, back to the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, when I was policing, particularly in the 70s and the 80s, those who sat at the very top level of criminality were armed robbers.
Oh.
The people who would pull a stocking over their head, get a sawn-off shotgun, and attack what we called money boxes, in other words, the security vans, and sometimes the banks themselves. They were the creme de la creme of criminals.
Wow.
The rewards were massive if they got away with it. Likewise, the punishments were huge because they'd go to prison for a very long time.
Okay.
And then in the 80s, a number of them got shot dead by the police because successful ambushes were carried out. They were in the act carrying the guns, didn't obey the orders given by armed police, so consequently they were shot dead. And this coincided with what started as a trickle, then became a river, and then became a torrent of cocaine coming into the UK and Europe. And suddenly, these well-established, very much respected in criminal circles, villains thought, why am I going to grab a shotgun, go and rob a money box with the distinct risk of getting shot by the police or getting captured and getting 30 years when I can do this new drug dealing thing? This cocaine that comes in that we can buy cheaply from abroad and sell very expensively in the UK. And that is really how it started. And of course, the drugs industry has ballooned since then. Absolutely, by an umpteen multiples. It's got so much bigger. So much, in fact, that the illegal drugs industry now, globally, is the fourth biggest industry in the world. Wow. So, of course, you imagine from South America, from Afghanistan and Pakistan, where so much of the heroin comes from, to the manufactured drugs that are made in places like Amsterdam and elsewhere, to all of this industry. It's bigger than the textile industry. And look at us now, all wearing clothes, walking on carpet.
Yeah.
The drugs industry is bigger than that. And, of course, it employs so many people now. So many people can make a living out of it, and they do. So criminality has changed. Many people have muscled in onto their patch, their postcode, their bit of turf, with violence as the currency of the drugs industry. And that is so hugely responsible for where we're at now with serious and organised crime essentially running rampant.
So things like knife crime, that is a consequence of the drug trade.
Inherently connected. So much of that knife crime, again now, is because you've got teenagers who are dealing drugs. And in order to protect their turf, their patch, their postcode, they use violence as a currency.
Okay.
It's a very useful tool, unfortunately. And that is to blame for so much of the knife crime, for so many people arming themselves a few years ago. But with that increasing amount of knife carrying, people that are not involved in that criminality, particularly young, impressionable kids, have said to themselves, well, we know people on the estate that are carrying knives. We better carry one to protect ourselves. And so the problem gets worse and worse and worse. And, of course, all the reliable stats will tell you that if you're a young person and you take a knife out onto the street, you are many, many more times likely to become a victim of knife crime yourself rather than actually protecting yourself, which is what they think they're going to do.
Yeah. What about grooming gangs? We read about it so often in the papers. We know of the case in Rochdale and Rotherham, and now the Met are looking into a few thousand cases of it. Is it epidemic? Is it all over the country? Is it in every community? Or is it actually a very small number?
It's a phenomenon that has come to light since my days in policing. But of course, as a policing and crime commentator and writer, I've kept a very close eye on it. In fact, Maggie Oliver, the wonderful Maggie Oliver, I am lucky enough to count as a friend.
Okay.
And her experiences and all the victims that she's helped, and some of whom I've spoken to, has given me an insight into this pernicious, revolting, newish kind of crime phenomenon, which blights so many of our inner cities. And it is not racist in the slightest to say that the majority of perpetrators of the crimes that have come to light thus far are of Pakistani origin, and many of them happen to be Muslims as well. And the majority of victims have been young, white, vulnerable girls. There has been some appalling behaviour by social workers, police officers, including senior police chiefs and others who chose not to rock the boat. Oh, let's look the other way because of racial sensitivities. And that, I'm afraid, is quite deep-rooted in much of policing. People are not courageous to stand up and call facts facts because they fear it will blight their promotion chances, for example. Or, moreover, it may cause community unrest. And quite frankly now, with 4 million Muslim people being in the UK, I think that, and of course we've got the law-abiding percentage, which is considerable, who contribute to UK life, who are integrated, but there is a growing number of people who live in isolation, who don't appreciate Britain for what it is, other than to try and rinse it, who commit criminality, and were there to be, shall we rather clumsily say, an uprising or huge civil unrest, I think the police know, but won't say, that they don't have the numbers to be able to put that down and keep the streets safe. So they're afraid.
So then what, if the police haven't got enough numbers to keep the country safe, how are we still existing? Why is this not like a national agenda where everyone's being told, you're not protected? There's not enough cops on the streets to protect everyone now.
Because they're frightened of saying it. And of course, if a senior police chief stood up and said, if the worst was to happen, we are not in a position to deal with it, then people would ask exactly the same question. Well, what are we paying you for then?
Yeah.
Surely something needs to change. Surely you need to be more robust, or you need to have greater numbers. And that, of course, all comes down to money. And, of course, the government is not going to say, right, we'll give the police a load more money because at the moment they couldn't keep the peace if it all kicked off. No politician and no senior police officer is going to be honest enough to stand up and tell the truth.
Yeah. You are, or were, one of the most commended cops of your day. Do you look at modern day cops and think standards have slipped from when you were on the beat?
I look at frontline police officers, generally speaking, the men and women that would run towards danger whilst we all might find somewhere to hide or run away. And I have unshakable, unending respect, admiration, and because I'm an ex-cop, love for them. They are, however, a very different breed from what we were, and some of that is a good thing. There was some rampant racism back in my day.
Yeah.
And, that is largely a thing of the past, albeit, of course, the Met is forever being called institutionally or systematically racist.
Do you think the Met is institutionally racist?
It was a very foolish thing of Mark Rowley to not accept that when Baroness Casey published her report.
Okay.
Very, very foolish of him. He should have taken that on the chin and accepted it. I think that would have done some good. It's about the systems and the way it's set up and the way that it's operated, I think, which causes some prejudice, as opposed to being overtly racist police officers on the front line.
Okay.
I'm utterly convinced that if that exists, it's a tiny, tiny minority which is being rooted out. So it's not like it was in my day. If the Met's greater systems, of which I have no working knowledge, are set up so that they do prejudice against people in terms of promotion or the such like, well, that is something that should have been sorted out decades ago.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's 2025. The Brixton riots were 1981.
Yeah.
And I was there. And then, of course, what followed was the Scarman report, which kind of said almost the same as what Baroness Casey said nearly 40 years later. But so in terms of the front line, they are different, of course. They're of two different generations, really, from my intake. They're very different. Policing is different. Their training is different, not as thorough as it should be in terms of knowing the law like they should do. And essentially, if you speak to senior police officers now, and word came back to me the other day from an officer who's shortly to take up post as a commander in the Met upon promotion. And in a discussion they were having, and somebody was trying to put forward the virtues of policing back in the day, because it wasn't all bad by a long chalk. And this senior officer turned around and just dismissively regarded everything that happened in the policing past as being elitist or racist, which, of course, is drivel.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't all that way in the slightest. And in the desire to reform policing, they have, in many respects, thrown the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay.
In terms of the training and, of course, the culture that they tried to dismantle. They were so stupid. The media used to bang on about police canteen culture. Senior police officers were so stupid, they thought if they got rid of the canteens, that would deal with it, right? I kid you not. I mean, and it is laughable, isn't it? Right? But so many hard-working cops now, it's why you'll see them queuing up for a burger or a sandwich or a kebab in the midst of their shift.
Yeah.
And then, of course, donut, idiot, what do they call themselves? These people that film the auditors.
Yeah.
They'll film them and say, oh, look at the police, queuing for a Mackie D's, you know what I mean? Well, they might be doing 8, 10 or 12 hours. They are entitled to eat, and they would be in a canteen having subsidised food, except the canteens got closed.
Yeah.
So cut them a bit of slack. They are different. The most damaging aspect for frontline policing, and what has caused so much damage to the trust and respect that the police used to have for them, is the fact that they're led by clowns in so many regards and on so many occasions. People who just want to climb that greasy pole of promotion will trample over anybody to get what they want in terms of the next rank. And consequently, the front line are committing suicide in greater numbers than ever before.
Wow, I did not know that.
Are leaving policing in greater numbers than ever before, are disillusioned, and morale is on the floor. They don't trust their management, and rightfully so. Their management would trash them and their careers if they thought it was going to benefit them. So a lot of the kind of loyalty that we had to one another, the way we would look out for each other, cover each other's backs, once that urgent assistance shout went up, it didn't matter what you were doing. If your trousers were round your ankles and you were midst doing something, you went. If you were eating, you dropped your knife and fork, you went. You did everything to protect and back up your colleagues. But I also have to say, policing now on the front line is more dangerous. They face violence at far greater levels than we did. And I'm a cop who got stabbed in the neck, stared down the barrel of a gun on more than one occasion, and had to live in witness protection. So I faced a fair amount of threat and harm and all of that in my career. But those frontline uniformed cops now, not only do they face a far greater danger, and not only are they assaulted in far, far greater numbers than we ever were, but the trauma they have to deal with. We talk about knife crime. They are holding the guts in place of young people in an effort to save their lives on a regular basis. The murder levels that we have in this country would be far greater if it wasn't for the first aid rendered by police officers, paramedics, and the brilliance of surgeons, doctors, nurses, anaesthetists, auxiliary nursing staff, and everybody that keeps people alive. It would be off the Richter scale if it weren't for so many of those factors.
Well, we talk about knife crime, shoplifting, youth violence. Is Britain more chaotic and more dangerous today than it's ever been?
Yes. And unfortunately, people's perception and fear of crime is far greater, and there is plenty of justification for that. We're not quite universally across the nation the Bronx yet. I'm not saying that for a moment. And there are so many beautiful places in the UK that don't have crime anywhere near the levels that we have in our inner cities. But there's a creep of crime going out into those lovely, wonderful, chocolate box cottagey, beautiful places in the Cotswolds and the such like. Drugs are everywhere. You know, I talk about my fictional Mrs. Miggins, who lives in a beautiful stone cottage in the Cotswolds, and she's a lovely lady. She's read the Express all her life, okay, and she's a law-abiding, lovely woman with a big family, and her grandson comes round for Sunday lunch, and he's a big strapping lad, you know, plays for the local rugby club. He's a good fun boy, and Mrs. Miggins is somewhat puzzled as to why he has 3 portions of crumble and custard on a Sunday afternoon. She thinks, oh, he's just a growing lad. Little does she know that when he walks down at the end of her garden, he creeps behind the greenhouse and has a bifter. Right, smokes a joint, right, and when he comes back in, he's got the munchies. So of course he wants 2 more portions of apple crumble and custard, which Mrs. Miggins has so lovingly prepared, because drugs are everywhere. And where drugs goes, violence is sure to follow, unfortunately. So there is crime at just about every corner of the nation, but it's not as rampant or as bad, of course, as it is in some of our inner cities where you just have to be so very careful.
So you say the leaders in these police forces are donkeys, they're idiots. How much leeway do the cops have to just follow common sense? For example, if a copper sees someone, a person on the street comes up to me and says, that man wrote something offensive about me on Twitter, he called me a fairy, and I want him arrested for a hate crime, homophobic. The police, it feels like the police are being told by their leaders, well, yeah, you've got to arrest that person, we're going to have to investigate this properly, rather than them saying, chill out, mate, it's just Twitter. Deactivate your account if you don't like it.
Well, or just for me to put a slight twist on that
Okay.
hypothetical situation. Many years ago, of course, you had sergeants that would preside over the incoming crimes and see whether they needed to be delegated or whether they could just be written off as no crime, for example, which used to happen way back in the day. Now, of course, police officers are not really allowed to use their own discretion. That's been stripped away, sadly. And policing is all the poorer for it.
Yeah.
And by that, I'll give, for example, because I'm sure we might touch upon two-tier policing, for example, such a common phrase these days. Back in the day, if a sergeant saw a set of circumstances come in that had been reported as a crime, say, let's use a real example, that family from Hertfordshire who complained about their primary school and the appointment of a new head or deputy head, and they did it in a WhatsApp group or on social media, and they ended up being arrested, locked up, and receiving £20,000 in damages for the inconvenience. Okay, because the police was so wrong. There was never a crime there. Never, ever a crime. As the minute those circumstances were reported, I just looked at it and said, there's no crime here. No crime has been committed. An experienced sergeant who had been taught the law properly, so he knew the law, the act and the section under which it would or would not fall, and would just look at that and would bin it off. Just throw it in the bin. All right, not literally, but classify it as no crime, no further action, and it would just be something that lays dormant and gathers dust and is never going to be actioned.
Yeah.
Now, if that sergeant's got an eye on the promotion poll and wants to become an inspector, they're terrified of taking such action because they feel they might get called into account at some point. But it's clear the police are investigating stuff that are not crimes because they don't know the law, they haven't been taught well enough, they haven't been trained to learn that law word perfect. That's all old hat, you see. That's what we used to do in our day, and that's what's frowned on as being elitist and all that stuff. So they've binned all of that, but actually we knew the law and we knew the elements of the law and what evidence constituted a sufficient package to nick someone or get them charged. If you had supervising officers that really knew the law and had the courage of their own convictions, they would just discard this stuff and just say it's nonsense, it's not a crime, just file it, no further action, not a crime. But they don't. They send those unfortunate police officers, and we've all seen the videos, haven't we?
Yeah.
Of police officers looking rather forlorn as they go up to somebody's front door and ring the doorbell, which is invariably filming them. Yeah, and then they rock up and they come out with some utter drivel and go in and search the houses, largely without any kind of authority because there's not a crime being committed. The police needs to get a grip. There is some kind of signs that they're moving more towards a common sense approach, but it's a lot of police officers they've got to drag with them, a lot of senior police chiefs. And of course, so much of this boils down to the fact that policing, when they changed the Metropolitan Police Force to the Metropolitan Police Service, they changed more than just the name.
Okay.
They changed the mindset. And so many of these highly university-educated police chiefs, who disappeared off to university, came back with their heads full of so much pseudo-intellectual claptrap, which has no place in policing whatsoever. They came back and they've deliberately changed it into a kind of social service. And that's what it's become. But what do the public want? They want a police force that is going to patrol the streets so they're visible. Hopefully you know them, and therefore they'd be contactable, right? As opposed to fill in a form on or dial, whatever nonsense number it might be. Prevent crime, investigate it promptly and professionally when it happens, and lock up bad people. That's essentially what the public want from their local police. But as the police have retreated from the streets and surrendered the streets to the criminals, because that's what they've done, that's where we're at now. That's why you've got rampant knife crime, rampant shoplifting, and so much other crime, because the streets have been surrendered. The police will justify all of that by saying, well, we had to investigate crime that happens behind closed doors. And they do have a point.
Okay.
sex offences, domestic violence, child sexual abuse, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Of course it needed resources deploying to it, but not at the expense of surrendering the streets. They didn't realise, those foolish police leaders didn't realise what surrendering the streets would do. And that whole shoplifting epidemic, that whole knife crime carrying and violence on the streets is entirely down to the fact, almost entirely down to the fact, that the police, sadly, tragically, surrendered the streets.
But what about when the public do their job for them? For example, phone gets stolen, pickpocketed. It happened to my wife, actually. Phone got pickpocketed last Christmas on Oxford Street. We used Find My Phone. We had the house in Tottenham, between Tottenham and Seven Sisters. We have the exact location. Tell the police we've got the location of it. The police say, nothing we can do. If you're given the address of where the property is, why can't they just say, okay, yeah, we'll go knock on the door, see who's about?
Because modern policing would want to be there in such numbers that they could quell any kind of uprising that might occur if they came across some form of aggravation, you see. Back in the day, a couple of us would have gone round, kicked the door in, you're nicked, pal.
Yeah.
Right, there's the phone, there's you, you're nicked.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't happen that way these days, you know. That's why we used to love kicking doors and nicking people. Oh, my word, it was such a joyous job here to do. There is quite nothing as joyous as nicking people. Well, that's the easy part. Yeah. Then seeing them convicted at court and going down the steps to the prison cell. That's the real joyous bit that we all loved, is what we existed for. And back in our day, once again, and I apologise to the audience if I'm sounding like a stuck record, but they did throw that out with the bathwater, the policing of the streets. We ruled the streets.
Yeah.
All right. In Brixton in 1981 we didn't, because there was a big uprising against that, right? And it was a very, very unpleasant weekend, believe you me. Very unpleasant. And some lessons were learnt, but still thereafter, the whole concept and understanding that the police need to be on the streets wasn't thrown out then. It came some years later. And we are sadly reaping all the bad repercussions of that.
Are the police too political now?
I think some of their chiefs undoubtedly are, or perhaps they're too quick to please their political masters. Police and crime commissioners, which has just been announced by this government, are going to be abolished. Shabana Mahmood says she's going to abolish those, but then she's going to devolve those powers to mayors. Well, we've already got a police and crime commissioner who's a mayor, and his name's Sir Sadiq Khan in London. Have a look at London and see how that arrangement's working. It's really not worthy of any further comment, dare I say. So that's not particularly the answer. Policing is always politicised to a certain extent. They'll say it isn't. Police chiefs will say it isn't. We have operational independence and that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, you might do, but why do they all love going to Westminster, those police chiefs? Why do they all love rubbing shoulders with Home Secretaries and other members of the Cabinet and Prime Ministers and all that kind of game? Because they love it. Their self-importance, they absolutely can't get over themselves, and they move away from the fact that actually policing is about public service and not self-service. I'm afraid some of them lose sight of that.
Okay. It does feel like, I don't want to just hammer the police, but it does feel, I guess maybe this is not the police's fault, but it feels to me like criminals today are cared for more than the victims. So I know, okay, we've got a huge backlog in the criminal courts, but if I see someone shoplifting from whatever shop it is, I'm scared to attack that person, pull them to the floor, because I feel when the cops turn up, it's me that's going to get arrested for trying to defend the property of the shop.
No matter how many interviews I do, this year or next year, I will not be asked a better question than that one. And it's really, really important. And it's also very true what you say. Criminals have much more rights than victims because criminals' rights are enshrined in law. The Police and Criminal Evidence Act, for example.
Yes.
Okay? Their rights are enshrined in law as to sleep, rest, feeding, access to a lawyer, and all those kind of things. Okay? There's other legislation that cover the rights of criminals. What do we not have in this country? A victims' law. There's codes of conduct, but if anybody doesn't abide by a code of conduct, they're only going to get some kind of reprimand. They're not going to be arrested and charged and taken to court. And it is a matter of deep, deep shame upon this country that victims' rights are not enshrined in law. Imagine if you were the victim of an assault, a sexual assault, a burglary, you had your car stolen, whatever it may be, or you were the loved one of a murder victim, okay? And thereby you are, of course, a victim of crime by natural extension.
Yeah.
Imagine if your rights were enshrined in law. Imagine if you could hold your police to account in law. That is what we should have, but we do not have. Criminals, all their rights are protected. Victims.
And this protection for criminals, that extends to foreign criminals too.
Yeah, every arrested person
Yeah.
is covered by the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. Everyone. So right from the moment that hands are laid on them and they are arrested, their rights are protected. And of course we have 12,000 criminals in British jails at the moment.
Foreign ones, yeah.
Thereabouts. Now, I would largely want to see so many of them deported.
Yeah.
Perhaps even without costing us the expense of locking them up. But not all. Not all, because we have to think about victims here. It's very, very important. If anybody were unfortunate enough to lose a loved one, courtesy of somebody who shouldn't be in this country, and there are far too many cases we could quote there, unfortunately, then I would not want that murderer being sent back to their country that might have a far more lenient approach than we do. I wouldn't want to see somebody getting life with a minimum recommendation of 25 or 30 or 35 years, only for them to be flown home after a couple of years and perhaps be let free to walk the streets. So there would have to be a very careful balance struck so that criminals who got perhaps over a certain amount of years as a sentence would have to serve that here, and then we could boot them out. That is if they don't die in prison, of course. And I personally would want many of them to do exactly that, to gasp their last breath in jail, particularly murderers, of course. And I think in for other crimes where the sentence may not be as heavy, say, for example, drug dealers, burglars or people like that, yes, I think we shouldn't incarcerate them at our cost. We should boot them straight out. But of course, with our porous borders and our pathetic lack of control over who comes into this country and who doesn't, there is a likelihood that they may come back. Were that to be the case, then I would say, okay, and if they were captured, of course, serve the rest of their sentence, double it, immediately, immediate doubling of that sentence for having returned back to the UK illegally again, and then deport at the end of that.
And that's a very good idea. A very, very good idea. Which countries are committing the most, or which criminals which are foreign are from which country the most over here? Because I'm even just looking at the stats. I've looked at London. I know in one part of London there's Afghan gangs who are more prominent in this area. In the north part of London, there's Albanian gangs who are causing all kinds of turf war issues. Which nationality of criminals are the biggest issue for us?
Well, there's a lot of stats to back up exactly what you've said. People originating from Afghanistan are something like 22 times more likely than a native British person to commit an offence of a sexual nature, for example. And the stats all bear that out. Likewise with the Albanians who came in here and got a pretty firm grip on much of the drugs industry. Many of them have been arrested and locked up for that kind of stuff. They disproportionately commit more crime than native Brits do. What's happened in recent years is that the Home Office and others, including the police, have not provided us with accurate data. And once again, this comes down to cowardice.
Yeah.
Because people are afraid to tell us who's committing what crime. Of course, the bulk of crime in Britain gets committed by, guess who? British people.
Yeah.
Right? You know, but the whole justice system and the whole numbers of police and what have you were kind of set many decades ago to deal with our own garbage so we could capture and lock up our own trash,
Yeah.
which is kind of what we did back in my day.
Yeah.
But now, of course, with so many criminals imported from elsewhere around the world, it makes it much more difficult for the police. The demand on them is far greater. But we should have these accurate statistics. The Home Office and the police have promised us we're going to get those.
Oh, yeah.
But I would say don't hold your breath, because if they were to be published, it might very much support politicians of a certain persuasion in their arguments for, which I think we should all be entitled to, secure borders and the proper repatriation or deportation of people who break the law here.
So with coppers like Wayne Couzens and the London coppers that were sharing images of dead women and all these horrible things, Mark Riley would say that there's a few bad apples, but generally speaking, this is not representative of the force. But we have these examples scattered across lots of forces, and lots of forces are in special measures. Is it time that we actually just decided enough's enough? We can't stop all these cops from being cops and start again magically, but do we need a proper root and branch fix of policing across this country?
The few bad apples phrase doesn't hold up any longer, right? That's consigned to the dustbin, because in recent times, many police officers, not only from the Met, but from around the country, many of them have been convicted of very serious crimes.
Yeah.
It's not just the Cousins and the Carricks of this world.
Yeah.
Utter monsters as they are, there have been many, many other police officers, and you don't have to spend much time on the internet searching up convicted police officer. If you're going to do that, set aside a lot of time, because unfortunately a lot of cases will come up. There has been, of course, a lack of supervision, I think. Again, police officers are afraid to actually stand up and supervise and understand who it is that's working for them. There's also been a shocking, in the rush to employ people, vetting wasn't sufficient, so many entirely unsuitable people got into policing. And in fairness to Sir Mark Rowley and the Met, he's recognised that. They have revamped their systems, they've tightened up hugely, and let's hope that such monsters don't find their way into policing again. Policing will never be perfect because it's full of people.
Yeah.
And we're all flawed one way or another. Some are more deeply flawed than others, and they shouldn't get into policing. There is a greater willingness now of police officers to blow the whistle on wrongdoing, but there needs to be a balance struck, because that can often turn into everybody mutually distrusting each other. And that's very dangerous in policing, because when I go running through that door full tilt, I need you right behind me.
Yeah.
So you need that trust and that team building, and those things are extremely important. Policing is very, very challenging. It is, in many regards, in crisis. I think it has to ditch this nonsense attitude that everything in the past was bad, because it manifestly wasn't. Embrace some of what was done well in the past, instead of forever trying to reinvent and reinvent and reinvent. Because look where all that reinvention's got us. And when I say us, I mean us, the public.
Yeah.
In terms of how we feel when we go out onto the streets, our safety and the crime that we witness or sometimes become victim of. So there's an awful lot of work to be done. If policing will ever get back to what not only I'd like to see, but the public want, need and deserve, I don't know.
One of the biggest criticisms I hear these days about cops in Britain is that it's two-tier policing. It's two-tier policing. How do you feel about that?
There's been multiple tiers in policing ever since the day policing was invented. And some of it's actually quite a good thing. Let's give a fairly simple sort of example. Say there's a bunch of kids who are committing antisocial behaviour down the local park, and a call comes into the police. And the first officer to go to deal with them is a probationary PC. Not long out of training, keen as mustard, I would hope, very enthusiastic. That officer would probably deal with those youths, I would like to think, perhaps quite robustly. Maybe they've got arrest figures target that they need to hit by way of their promotion or whatever. Yeah. Either way, my sympathy's not with the youths who are causing antisocial behaviour, right?
Yeah.
So that young in-service officer might deal with them in a very different way. Say, for example, if an officer with 20 years' service got called to the same park to deal with the same kids in exactly the same situation. Now, both those situations could be very different, but they could both be right.
Yeah.
But they'd be very different approaches. So there's often been kind of multiple ways of doing the same job, but back in the day, police were allowed that discretion.
Yeah.
They were allowed to deal with it as they saw fit. And I think that's very much becoming a thing of the past. In terms of, okay, two-tier justice, yes, of course. Look at the sentence handed down to Lucy Connolly. Completely and utterly disproportionate compared to somebody who was sentenced only the other week for rape and got a non-custodial sentence. I mean, I shake my head in utter disbelief. But of course, the sentencing and that aspect of the criminal justice system is not policing's business.
Correct.
The police's job is to investigate the crime, gather the evidence, arrest the perpetrator, and put them in front of the court.
Well, when you see politicians like Robert Jenrick, how do you, as a former copper, and I actually think current coppers feel when they see politicians like that going and catching fare dodgers on trains and saying, why are you jumping the rail? Why? Or going to the car boot sales and accosting the guys who are selling what may or may not be stolen tools. How does that make you feel as a copper?
I thought it was great. When he went to Stratford, it was Stratford railway station he went to at the end of the Jubilee line, and caught all those people pushing through and leaping over barriers. I see that on an almost daily basis, and it irritates the hell out of me. What I do now is if they do it in front of me, I shout out, "Fare dodger!" Right? And I point, and it grabs people's attention. And I've had people turn back and look at me and go, "Yes, you, fare dodger!" Right? My little bit for what it's worth, as opposed to trying to leg it after them. At my age, I wouldn't catch them. But, yeah, fair play to Robert Jenrick. Opportunism, politician, yeah, great. But why not?
Yeah.
Absolutely, why not? And the boot fairs, these boot sales, I mean, and this is something that I think is a very good argument for having a victim's law. You imagine if you're a chippy or a Sparks, you know, or a plumber or a plasterer or a painter and decorator or whatever trade it may be that you have. And that van that you've worked so hard for to buy and probably reinforce the back door of it and put your tools in it, and you come down in the morning and either that van's gone or the back door's open and your tools are gone. Either way, there's going to be some days when you are not going to work and you are not getting paid.
Yeah.
And that is catastrophic, especially if your finances are tight.
But then, Peter, if Robert Jenrick, and I've met him once, he's smaller than I am. He's not a tough guy. If that little weed can go to go and confront these suspected criminals, why can't the police then turn up to the car boot sales and say, we want to see the serial numbers for these tools?
Because they'll tell you they're too busy doing other stuff. That's the reality of it. It's why they won't put officers out, generally speaking, just to patrol the streets, because they've got such a deluge of 999 calls which need answering. And this, again, is their fault because they've turned into a social service.
Yeah.
You know, it's by and large, it's of their making. All right, policing is a numbers game to a certain extent. We do need more police, but there's no point giving our current police services and constabularies more officers if they're going to sit behind a desk and focus on what people put on social media, is it? Right? We're not good. I wouldn't trust them to give them the officers if they were going to do that. If they were going to get officers and put them out on the street and do, as I spoke about earlier, patrol, be known, be contactable, nick bad people, investigate crime, great. I'd be looking to give them as much money as possible. But, yeah, I'm fair play to Robert Jenrick, although I did really annoy him.
How?
Can I just tell you what happened?
Yeah.
I was in a green room with a TV station, and he came in with one of his underlings who I knew. Okay, so I said to his assistant, I said, can I have a photograph of next to Mr. Jenrick, please, right? So, yeah, and he took the photograph of me and Mr. Jenrick. When they both disappeared off, I posted on social media, right? I said, Robert Jenrick, I said, there's the next Prime Minister, the man who should be the next Prime Minister of the UK, standing next to Robert Jenrick. Right? Well, apparently that didn't go down very well. The underling got torn off a strip for having let that photograph be taken, and I did apologise. But I said, if you haven't got a sense of humour, I mean, come on, you know.
Well, look, the Tories failed on crime, it seems. Labour aren't doing much better. So who do we look to? We're going to give a chance to Lib Dems, the Green Party, or Reform?
Well, I'm just going to... the thought of Ed Davey actually leaving a water park to come and be in charge of something, right, is terrifying. And the thought of him having any control over any policy of any description whatsoever is terrifying. With the Greens, I think probably the police should spend a lot of time looking at some people in the Green Party rather than being led by them. Again, you know, yes, perish the thought. Reform, well, if the polls are to be believed, they might form the next government, mightn't they?
Yeah.
I just want a government. I don't care what political persuasion it is. I want a government that's competent. I want a government that actually understands the issues that face people with regards to crime and policing. And what do we want? We don't want to live in fear. And I come across many, many people virtually every day of my life that I talk to, and they say, Peter, I live in fear. Fear of going out my front door, fear of being a victim of crime, or alternatively say, I fear for my children and my grandchildren's future.
Yeah.
And I hear this on a very regular basis. What a dreadful state to be in for having people living in fear.
Yeah.
Okay, my advice to many people would be, get an immobiliser on your car, have a steering lock, have one of those retractable posts put in your driveway if you can, if you've got a driveway. Get a burglar alarm on your house. Get CCTV on your house. Possibly get a four-legged friend who's quite partial to biting the rear end of burglars.
Yeah.
You know, a very good deterrent. And these kind of things. But they all come at a cost. Not everybody wants to fit them because they can feel it's, why should I? Why should I cave in?
Yeah.
But I really would like politicians to address the fact that so many people in this once great nation are living in fear. And that is absolutely appalling. We did not have our predecessors storm the Normandy beaches for 80 years later or 85 years later for people in this country to be living in fear.
Social media. Hey, I know, listen, I know you're a granddad, but you are on social media.
I'm not yet.
You know?
No, I'm not yet.
I mean,
I'm younger than I look, right? Okay? But my eldest got engaged last weekend.
Congratulations.
And him and his girlfriend are planning on getting married in 27.
Okay.
And if they're blessed enough, I think the pitter-patter of little feet might come soon after.
Well, you're on social media.
Yes.
A lot more, a lot more than me, I would say. Do we think that we're encouraging this new young generation of criminals? Because I'll tell you why I ask. last week there was a video footage of some students at the University of Leicester, or Leicester University.
Yeah.
Some criminal from London, a 21-year-old's gone up there, exploiting the students, robbing them, whipping them in the face with belts. He even got them to make a TikTok video for his rap song or something. Thankfully, he's been arrested now because it blew up all over the internet. But I do see, whether it's the phone thieves on bicycles or whatever they're doing, more and more of these young kids who are doing the crimes are filming themselves doing the crimes.
Yeah, there's an element of that. But I bet that idiot that went to Leicester University didn't pick on the Leicester University rugby team, did he?
Of course not.
No, he'd have got a rather different reception.
Yeah.
Had he done that, I'm sure. He probably picked on vulnerable students who are perhaps not as robust as some of those boys or girls in the rugby teams.
Yeah.
I'd like to have seen him chance his arm with them.
Yeah.
I know who my money would have been on. Yeah, social media, for good or bad, is here to stay. It's not going away. Very interesting, though, that Australia this week have enacted the fact that under-16s can't have social media. I wonder if certain politicians will want to follow suit over here. I wouldn't be entirely against that, but I'm sure many people would. It's here to stay. I'm a big fan. I know it's like the internet, isn't it? It's like so many things that are new.
Yeah.
They can be a power for good, and they can be a very damaging bad thing. We've got to learn to live with it. I think when we talk about youngsters these days, I'm the father of 3 boys. I'm proud of the way I've raised them, together, of course, with my wife. I think current day parenting leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
Children need boundaries. It's what makes them secure, loved, safe. It's how they learn the meaning of the word no. No, don't touch that oven because it's hot. No, don't run in the street. Hold my hand because you'll get run over and then you'll die. And yet, I kid you not, I met a mother not so many weeks ago who said, I never use the word no with my child. It has so many negative connotations. I got as far away from her and her brat as quickly as I possibly could.
You say you've raised 3 boys and you're proud of them, but aren't they all West Ham fans?
No, Queen's Park Rangers, of course.
Oh,
Wash your mouth
even
out. Wash your
Even
mouth
worse.
out. In fact, today, because it's my birthday in a few days' time, I have booked for all 4 of us to go to Middlesbrough away. I've bought their match tickets. I've paid for their train travel.
Flipping heck. Wow.
They might be going a bit short at Christmas. That's all I can say. A very expensive day.
Well, let me ask you my favourite question. This is the one I'm most excited to ask you, actually, Peter. I hear you're doing a one-man show. Coming very, very soon. Tell me all about it.
Yes, I am, thank you. Yes, I'm going on a mammoth tour around the UK next year, starting on the 8th of January.
That's soon. That's like
8th
just
of
over a month
January.
away.
Churchill Theatre at Bromley. I'm in rehearsals, back in rehearsals later on this week. It's a one-man show, 2 parts. First part, many tales from my bonkers decade working undercover.
Yeah.
Believe you me, and it was bonkers. Stories of a couple of murders that I solved as well. And an interesting insight into how that occurred. And then the second half of the show is dedicated to my 20-year quest to try and find the killer of a man called Alistair Wilson, who was 30 years old when he was gunned down on his front doorstep of his home in Nairn in the Scottish Highlands. I've been going there for 20 years. It's a case that I said all those years ago when I'd been in Nairn for about a quarter of an hour, this is a case that could and should be solved. I completely hold that view now, 20 years later. I was there last week, had some more revelations that I've discovered. I've kept my size 12s up the rear end of Police Scotland for many, many years, trying to get them to do their job properly, trying to get them to deliver some justice for Alistair's wife, his 2 young kids. His kids were 2 and 4 at the time. Everybody else that loved him. It's an astonishing case. It's fascinating, but I think I'm inching closer and closer and closer to the person who may just have pulled the trigger.
See, you can take the man out of policing, but you can't take policing out of the man. What's the name of the one-man show?
It's called The Makings of a Murderer, The Undercover Detective. If you go to peterbleksley.com, you can buy all the tickets.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put a link in the comment section there as well, so people can purchase straight from us.
Thank you. 140 theatres I'm doing, so probably come into a theatre near you.
Well, congratulations, and thank you very much for coming down to the HQ today.
Thanks again for having me.
No problem at all. Well, thank you for watching. What an episode. What revelations. Leave your comments below. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and thank you for watching today's Daily Expresso. Bye-bye.